Hello, and welcome to another look with Christian King. I'm back for part 2 of 2 of my UFC 235 breakdown show. I had to split up into 2 parts. I had some issues at the end of the video, got interrupted, kind of lost my train of thought, wanted to give it a better take. So we're in this part 2, we are jumping straight in to the co-main and main event of this card. We've got Tyron Woodley taking on Kamaru Usman, the number 1 contender, for the welterweight 170-pound title. In the past, I have been far too quick to pick against Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley has grown on me, both, as far as being a fan and as far as appreciating why he fights the way he fights. And I felt like in the Darren Till fight, his game really made sense, and that was a good fight for him. So we're going to talk about, if we were to pick Kamaru, how would we be picking him to win? Is he going to submit Tyron Woodley? No. There's a 0% chance of Kamaru Usman submitting Tyron Woodley. Will he knock out Tyron Woodley? I think there is a 1% chance of that. I feel like Tyron would have to be tired for Kamaru to be able to knock him out. Tyron's got a pretty solid chin, and he doesn't get hit a lot. In fact, I think he gets hit the least out of anyone in that division. Okay, so that leaves Kamaru. His most likely path to victory would be a unanimous decision where he hangs in the first 3 rounds and clearly wins the last 2 based on having better cardio. So first off, is Usman's cardio as good as we think it is if he's fighting someone like Tyron Woodley where he doesn't have the grappling advantage? Or maybe he does have the wrestling advantage at least. He definitely doesn't have the grappling advantage. I doubt he has either, personally. I think only Ben Askren would have the wrestling advantage over Tyron. So Kamaru, he could win a decision here, but Tyron Woodley will probably not submit him, but I think Tyron Woodley can knock Kamaru Usman out. This would be a great time for me to be having visual aids for my show, but I work full-time and, I just have more important things I have to do with my time than make these podcasts take even longer to produce. So that's why my show is the way it is. This is something I can do for fun and not have to put hours of my valuable time into. At some point, I would like to do more. I would like to have more of a studio. I would like to have some video component. But for now, this is what I have. So it's a little bit hard when I'm just talking about things. But just in a basic way to say it, and it'd be a lot easier if I could show it. But Kamaru Usman kind of enters in on his takedowns in predictable ways. And when he's close, I don't really like his striking defense. And he overthinks a lot of his striking, which causes him to miss opportunities to counter. So I like Tyron Woodley to knock him out. I'm going to pick Tyron Woodley to knock him out in the first round. It's a little bit of an unlikely pick, I feel like, but I think that the longer the fight goes on, the less likely Tyron Woodley is to knock him out. And I'm thinking about Tyron's last fight. As soon as Till actually came in on Woodley, Woodley was instantly ready to counter. And that happened in the second round. I think that this will happen in the first round because Kamaru Usman is going to come straight at Tyron Woodley. I actually can see a scenario where Kamaru Usman gets dropped in the first 10 seconds of this fight. I can see that happening. And he might even get finished very quickly if he rushes in on Tyron. Tyron Woodley is extremely dangerous, and he doesn't have to fear Kamaru's takedown as much as Kamaru's other opponents have to. Because Tyron Woodley he doesn't have to be proactive defending takedowns. He just has to react because his wrestling is good enough to react. Whereas if you're in Emil Mech fighting Kamaru Usman, you have to be proactive about avoiding even letting him take one shot at you, and that makes it a lot harder to win a fight. So I'm taking Tyron Woodley to win by first round knockout. I feel like I could talk about this fight for longer, but I do have some stuff I need to do, so we will move on from this fight. Kamaru Usman is the underdog. Plus 158 would be the highest underdog number to get him at. And Tyron Woodley, minus 172 would be the best favorite odds to get him at. To be honest, those are really good odds for that fight. I don't really see anywhere there to make a good pick because those odds are close enough that they're far enough apart that it's not quite worth betting on Woodley, but they're far too close for it to be worth betting on Kamaru Usman. So I think that's one that you just got to leave alone. we're going to move on to the main event here. And honestly, I mean, it's hard to give much real analysis on this main event, but I'll give you my best shot. So, I'm going to make my pick, and then I'm going to give you the analysis, and then I'm going to give you the odds. My pick is Anthony Smith by first round knockout. It's not going to happen, but that's my pick. It's a wish pick. I know I make those sometimes, and this is one where I'm making a wish pick because I could easily say, well, Jon Jones by unanimous decision. The two most likely outcomes of this fight are Jon Jones by unanimous decision and Jon Jones by TKO or submission on the ground, like he did to Gus. You know, we forget how dangerous Jon is on top, and that Gustafsson fight was a good reminder. But I'm going with the major underdog here. I'm going with Anthony Smith to shock the world and knock out Jon Jones. Anthony Smith is ferocious. He's aggressive. Jon Jones, I don't like his defense. He's very open to punches. I think if Anthony Smith is able to close that distance immediately, then he's in this fight. And the reason why I'm saying first round knockout is because Jon Jones, like Floyd Mayweather, makes terrible personal life decisions, and also as the fight goes on, he learns more about you, and it becomes harder to pull a fast one on him or trick him or deceive him in any way. So the longer this fight goes on, the harder it gets for Anthony Smith to actually do anything offensive. So here's the key to victory for Anthony Smith. He has to dance with the one who brought him here. If he decides that this is going to be the fight where he's super patient and tries to fight more professionally and feel Jon Jones out, then he has no chance of winning this fight. His chance of winning this fight is to storm forward, throw power, and let it all hang out. That's his keys to victory here. He cannot contend with Jon Jones in a technical 5-round fight. But what he can do is he can contend with Jon Jones for those first 3 minutes when, for the first time since his rookie days, Jon Jones has someone storming after him trying to knock him out at the very beginning of the fight. That's what Anthony Smith needs to do. These odds are real stretched out. You can get Anthony Smith as high as plus 700. mybookie.ag is a great gambling website. And sports betting is legal in the United States, so I can comfortably talk about that. I will say that at plus 700, I'm going to go to MyBookie, since that's the only website that I would actually use. It's the only one I 100% know is reliable and trustworthy. So we're going to look here on MyBookie in particular, and we're going to see really quickly what we've got going on here. All right, betting lines, boxing and MMA. MMA. Okay. They've got odds for a possible matchup between Daniel Cormier and Brock Lesnar. I hope that fight's so dumb, but all right, so plus 615 on mybookie.ag for Anthony Smith. I don't see any prop bets. No prop bets. Yeah, so not much to do there. I'll check back later on in the week. If there was a prop bet for Anthony Smith by first round knockout, that's where I'd put your money, or just Anthony Smith inside the distance. The odds there were plus 615 on that website. I feel like the odds have to be at least plus 700. Honestly, if you can get me the odds if I can find a bet for Anthony Smith by knockout that's over plus 700, preferably over plus 800, I will be placing a small bet on this fight. So yeah, that's all I've got. Let's just recap really quickly before I go here. What is the best part? What are the highlights of this card? So the highlights of this card, in my opinion, are the 2 fights on the main card that are highly, highly unpredictable. And those fights for me, in order, are Cody Garbrandt versus Pedro Munoz. We talked about that. These are both from part 1, by the way, so go back and listen to that if you haven't already. So Pedro Munoz versus Cody Garbrandt is fascinating, just absolutely fascinating. If Cody Garbrandt gets knocked out there, that's basically the end of his career. There's such high stakes in that fight, and I do not think Pedro Munoz is an easy fight whatsoever. In fact, it might be the hardest matchup that Cody Garbrandt has ever had other than TJ Dillashaw. And it might even prove to be a worse style matchup for him. I'm very worried about Cody Garbrandt in that fight. And then the other one is Ben Askren versus Robbie Lawler, because Ben Askren's just never fought anyone as good as Robbie, but Robbie's also not in his prime anymore. And as I talked about on part 1 of the show, I mean, I can see it. Whatever happens in that fight, everyone is going to be like, oh yeah, of course, that was obvious. But it wasn't obvious, or otherwise everyone would have got it right. I went with Ben Askren. I also went with Pedro Munoz in those fights, so you see where I'm headed. I'm going to get out of here. These fights are going to be great this weekend. And I'll leave y'all with one thought. So thinking about the fact that I'm not going to have to miss these fights. Unfortunately, the thing that's hard about MMA is that it asks a lot of its fans. You know, I'm married. I have a life, and I can't always watch every fight card. But what's so hard about it is that there's no predicting which ones are can't miss versus which ones are UFC 234 the other weekend, which I would have had no problem being out of town for that card. And that is a little bit unfortunate. And obviously, there's no way to book fights that far in advance. But I'll just give you an example, okay? At the beginning of the college basketball season, you know when Duke and Carolina play, okay? You know what 2 dates they play each other. And on college football, you know what dates Alabama and Ole Miss play, or what dates Alabama and Auburn play. You know those games. And unfortunately in MMA, you don't really know until at best 2 months ahead of time when a card is just can't miss action. And unfortunately, this is one of those cards that is just can't miss action, but you can't be home every Saturday night. And that is one thing that's very hard about being an MMA fan. I will do my best to watch these fights. I will do my best to get back on this channel in a timely fashion and provide a recap show. And I hope everyone enjoys the fights. Until next time.